The following keynote speakers are very dear to the African Students Organization and are key figures in empowering African students and are part of many of our success stories. Each of them provide a life-changing opportunity for African asylum seekers, students, and refugees as they believe in the power of education as key for success. The first speaker is Mr. Joy Lowe. He's a social activist. I need to introduce him because he's done so many nice things. He's a social activist, the founder of Star Farm Ventures and Israel at Heart. Mr. Lowe was born in New York, and for many years now he's been investing in Israeli startups through Star Farm Ventures. In 2006, he established the Israel at Heart Scholarship Program, providing support to Israeli Ethiopian students. Since 2010, he's been the first to offer support to asylum seekers by providing them scholarships for academic studies. Since then, he remained the sole provider for these scholarships, despite the impressive increase in students. Thank you so much, Mr. Joy Lowe. You can.
Thank you. Could you hear me when I speak without a microphone? Okay.
We needed the microphone because otherwise.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Is that all right? No, that's not all right.
Try now.
Is it all right now?
Yeah.
Please use, he asked me to use this. Okay. Now we're okay. All right. Hey, it's great to see so many people here, so many friends here, so many students here. Very emotional for me. So I want to thank IDC for hosting this event and for being the one place where we were able to establish the program of giving scholarships to asylum seekers. The IDC has been an oasis of calm and safety for our students. While navigating very difficult circumstances the Israeli government has subjected the community to while here. In particular, I'd like to thank El Haji and Usman, our current president of the student organization, and our board of representatives of the African Student Organization for putting together this conference in such a professional manner. 2010, I was contacted by the IDC, probably Jonathan, and asked if I'd be willing to meet some African asylum seekers who wished to study at the IDC. I had started in 2006 the Israel at Heart Ethiopian Israeli Scholarship Program with the encouraging support of Professor Reichman and Jonathan Davis. We have over 200 Ethiopian Israeli graduates and currently 50 Ethiopian Israeli students studying at the IDC in various faculties. In a program run by the amazing Esther David. When I went to lunch with those 6 asylum seekers, I heard their stories about how they escaped genocide in Darfur and lifetime military conscription in Eritrea. Adam Bashar was among those students I met and learned so much from Adam about the hardships the community faced here in Israel, as well as learning about the many Israelis who opened up their hearts and homes to those who found their way across the Sinai in such difficult circumstances, often facing kidnapping, torture, and beatings at the hand of Bedouin smugglers. Adam Bashar himself was adopted by a kibbutz family. I think they might be in the back of the audience. And studied at Yamin Ord, as did Usman, who came as an unaccompanied minor at 14 from Darfur. Yamin Ord is a wonderful youth village started by Chaim Perry that has assisted hundreds of young people in need of guidance and nurturing. We must mention that many Israelis have remembered what Jewish values are supposed to stand for and the history we Jews faced as we ran away from our terrible tragedy in Europe. My own mom left Berlin as a 5-year-old and lived in Brussels, Belgium for 7 years, then France for a year, then Cuba for 6 months, before entering America in October 1941 as a 15-year-old. My dad came as a 13-year-old to New York from Vienna, Austria in 1939. This had a tremendous impact upon me. My parents sent me to yeshiva for 12 years because they wanted me to learn our Jewish traditions. We were never religious, but I had a very strong love for my heritage and for Israel, having then studied at Hebrew University in Jerusalem in 1971 for my junior year of college. I grew up knowing that my parents had it rough and missed most of their youth because of events taking place way beyond their control and their ability to actually understand why things happened as they did. I learned that the life of a refugee is full of challenges, and I knew in my heart, if ever I would have a chance to make a refugee's life easier, I would do it. And that lunch at the IDC back in 2010 was my opportunity to show my commitment to live up to that obligation. I cried with those 6 students, and we hugged and had an instant connection, even though we came from worlds apart. I felt their suffering, and I knew I wanted to help, and luckily I was in a position to offer them scholarships to the IDC. I've learned so much from those students. Adam Bashar walked me many times in South Tel Aviv, meeting so many members of the community and listening to their stories and being made aware of how difficult a time they have in Israel, while at the same time seeing how they appreciated being in a safe country that was enabling them to work and provide for their families. In the early days, Israel was far more hospitable. In the past many years, the government's policies of detention at Chulot, deportation, became the order of the day, never giving asylum seekers the right to be individually examined on their asylum requests, difficult to renew visas every 2 months, and with no health insurance. All of this has continued to apply unnecessary pressure on the community. The deposit tax enacted by the government requires that 20% of the asylum seekers' wages be paid into an account that only can be redeemed when they leave the country. In addition, employers are tasked with storing an additional 16% of the worker's salary toward a pension fund, all of which is done to make it economically difficult for employers to hire African asylum seekers. Keep in mind this deposit tax applies to no other foreign worker, just on Africans. In the past week's Torah portion, Kitzetse, it says, I quote, "Pay your employees on time. Day workers must be paid within 12 hours of conclusion of their workday, and night workers must be paid before sundown. For he is poor and sets his life upon it, lest he cry against you to God, and it be a sin unto you." I wonder what the religious think as they read these words. Yet, you see at restaurants and hotels, Africans doing work that many Israelis don't want to do. One of the main problems are the employment agencies who want to deport the African workers and bring in Filipinos or Russians because of the money they earn for bringing in foreign workers. Someone should investigate these employment agencies, and Kavlo Oved does an outstanding work trying to protect the rights of workers injured or left unpaid by these agencies. The problem is that Israelis don't seem to be paying attention to this behavior by the government, and the government, by using terms infiltrators, robbers, and rapists to describe the African asylum seeker community, has legitimatized the harsh treatment they implement. I was always taught that if you aren't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Israelis and Jews cannot escape the fact that the racist policies are being implemented against Africans. It's our job, the job of Jews and Israelis, to stand up for this community, which was us not too long ago. We must remember the pain and bitterness of what being rejected and ostracized feels like. It is our responsibility to demand better treatment by the government. Elections are to be held in the next few days, and I have not heard a word by any political party about the African asylum seekers. It's just not on the agenda of the government or anything or any political party. Well, then it's us, the people, who are aware of the injustice, to stand up, not to forget the fight for the rights of the dispossessed and hurting. As Isaiah the prophet said, it is our job to house the homeless, feed the hungry, and clothe the naked, for we were strangers in the land of Egypt. Now let's think about what we're going to do going forward. We're extremely lucky to have such a strong group of African students studying here in Israel and involved with our African student organization that we established back in the summer of 2017. I know each and every student, and they continue to inspire me daily with their optimism and strong desire to achieve success. I recommend the Israeli government grant more travel documents to Africans. About 1,400 Darfurians have travel documents, slightly longer-term visas. 600 were granted in 2007, and an additional 800 were given between 2017 and 2018. I brought 4 such students last year to New York to spend a month with me. They were invited by very well-known Rabbi Buckdahl to speak at the largest Jewish synagogue in New York, Central Synagogue, on Yom Kippur, and delivered both a short speech about their lives and opportunities to study in Israel, and they also recited the prayer to protect Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, which is made on all religious holidays. Thousands of Jews stood up and applauded and cried of joy listening to them. The rabbi expressed her pride in Israel, giving the students the opportunity to build a better life for themselves and their families. If our students could legally travel and have the right to return to Israel, they could both assist Israeli companies interested in doing business in Africa. In addition, single-handedly, they could take on the BDS movement on college campuses. They know better than anyone the repression they suffered at the hands of their own regime, which forced them to leave their countries to begin with. One of our students, Mutassim Ali, who came to Israel from Darfur, where he had been arrested for being a dissident, studied law in Hebrew at Ramat Gan. We helped him go to Harvard the last 2 summers to study immigration law, and he was accepted on a full scholarship to study for his master's degree in law at George Washington University. He moved to Washington last month. He moved to begin his studies. Yakalo, who came from Eritrea, studied psychology here at the IDC and did his master's here. He's living in Seattle. Dahar from Somalia, who studied at the IDC, is living in Minnesota. Taj from Darfur, who did his undergrad at the IDC, then did his master's at Tel Aviv University in counterterrorism, lives in Montreal with Tesfu from Eritrea, who studied in business at the IDC. They both got visas to move to Canada. Gabriel from South Sudan is living in Winnipeg. He studied at the IDC. Then, because he is a Christian and wanted to be a minister, I sent him to Bible school in the north of Israel. And I feel a terrible loss when I think of all these capable young people who have over 10 years in Israel feel the need to leave and begin life anew. Whereas the community they have here in Israel is so special. They won't have that in Canada or the United States. Keep in mind that while we each day and every morning wake up with our families in Israel, the students in our program and the entire African asylum seeker community here in Israel rises each morning with the fear that they may be asked at very short notice to leave Israel and begin life anew without their own parents, who probably are living in refugee displacement camps in Chad, Darfur, or any other displacement camps in Africa. Tonight you'll meet some of our students and hopefully learn more about them and have a chance to witness for yourself the determination they have to create a better life for themselves and their children. I believe this community can be a huge asset for the state of Israel in so many different ways. I hope tonight you will leave here feeling the same way I do. Thank you.